Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Development Control Committee. 6:30 p.m, so I shall commence this meeting. First things to discuss are basic standard safety announcements about fire evacuation, etc., etc. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, it's for real. Please evacuate the building as soon as you can through the nearest available exits, which are seated behind you in the public gallery and behind us either side. In the event that somebody needs resuscitation, we also have a defibrillator machine in the kitchen behind us. I sincerely hope we don't need to use that. The meeting is webcast, so if you are speaking tonight, I would very much like to politely request that you have the microphone on so that we capture what you're speaking, capture testimony. And for all of us here who've got mobile phones, can I request that we switch our mobile phones off or to silent for the duration of the meeting? I'll just do a brief preamble and then we'll get started. The explanation of order of business tonight. I am Councillor Andrew McCormick. I'm going to be chairing the meeting. To my immediate right is our legal officer, who will make sure that everything we do is lawful. Next to my right is Councillor Michael Howard-Sorrell, who is Vice Chair of the committee, and then we've got another legal person to the right of him. Further to my right are the councillors who are forming the body of the committee, who will be making decisions tonight. These will be based purely on planning law. It's not a political meeting. What we will be looking at is policies that are mentioned in the local plan, any neighbourhood plans where applicable, and the national planning policy framework. We'll be listening to contributions brought before us tonight. At the appropriate time, I'll invite any speakers to contribute to the meeting in the order set out in the update paper, which in general terms is parish councillors first, objectors, then supporters, then any ward councillors who've indicated they would like to speak in advance. Each speaker will be possibly being asked questions of other councillors. Following spoken submissions, councillors have the opportunity to ask questions of the planning officers to my left, who will be introducing each item tonight. After questions to planning officers, and there may not be any because councillors will have had the opportunity to ask questions in advance, and on at least 2 of the items tonight may have visited the site. After questions to officers, we'll then move to debate, where eventually a motion will be put which we'll vote on, and that will be the decision which will be then recorded and read out. So there's 6 items in front of us tonight. I would expect us to take between an hour and a half, hopefully, with those. It depends really on how many questions we have arising therefrom. So without further ado, I shall commence business and ask, have we got any apologies for absence and substitutions? I think we're all present and correct.
Just want to check it's not in for the TPL items, just in case.
Yeah. Councillor Court?
I believe Councillor Court is not here.
Yeah, okay. Have we had any apologies sent from Councillor Court? Okay. Well, if he turns up later, we'll admit him at the conclusion of an item, beginning of an item. Any declarations of interest? Oh, got 2 or 3. Right, Councillor Bound?
Item number 3, I shall be stepping out, Chair.
Okay, duly noted. Councillor Phillimore?
Item number 2, Chair, on a previous application for 2 dwellings on this site, I spoke in objection as a ward councillor, but my mind is open to this one because it's a separate application. I'm not predetermined.
Okay, I note that, yeah. And Councillor Miller?
Agenda item number 4, I will be departing the committee room. It came before me as a parish matter.
Okay, I note that as well. Okay, right. So, do we have any urgent matters for us to consider tonight? Okay, I don't believe we have. We did have some orders of business on the agenda with 2 tree preservation order items. These have been deferred to the new year. So I think that brings us on to the first of our 6 planning items. So the first one up is land at Pyatt's House, Pyatt's Hill, Old Basing, which has been previously considered, so we can't have any new testimony tonight. And if the officer would like to introduce, please. Thank you.
This item number 1 concerns Pyatt's House at Pyatt's Hill, Basing, for the erection of 2 dwellings, garaging, parking, landscaping and private amenity space, as well as access to the dwellings. As the Chair rightly said, it was deferred at the 6th of December 2023 Planning Committee to secure a legal agreement that would ensure that the future occupiers of the 2 new dwellings would comply with the heritage management plan, given the existence of the scheduled monument to the east of the site. Members should note that this is the deferred reason is the only matter that can be considered by members tonight, and members are unable to go back to first principles and reconsider the proposals afresh. As noted within the officer's report on the agenda, the applicant has agreed to enter into a legal agreement with the council, and the draft agreement has been prepared for final completion, subject to the outcome of tonight's meeting. As outlined on page 25 of the agenda, on paragraph 8.27, it outlines there what the draft agreement entails and how it's been worded to ensure that the new occupiers of the dwellings comply with the heritage management plan. The agreement is drafted and worded to say that the owner will comply, the existing owner will comply with the heritage management plan, and then this will bind the new owners of the dwellings when the ownership of the dwellings is then transferred to whoever buys the properties. So this captures the legal agreement, this captures the current owner, and given the imposition of the suggested condition 23, which is ensuring compliance with the heritage management plan, this would bind them to carry out the development and thereafter maintain it in accordance with the heritage management plan. Given that, and the reason for deferment has now been met and satisfied, the recommendation is for approval subject to completion of the 106 legal agreement and the conditions outlined that are on from page 28 onwards on your agenda.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions for officers? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a question I raised at the post-doing panel meeting when we went through the agenda on Friday. Was the wording, and I assume there's going to be a sort of legal pronouncement on it, in the recommendation on page 15, the future occupiers of the 2 proposed dwellings are covenanted to comply with the heritage agreement. Now, it's my understanding in this committee over the years, the words covenant aren't mandatory. Now, we've been advised that time and time again. It's a civil matter. Now, reading paragraph 8.27, I don't see that word in there at all. It's just a bit of confusion. What's said in the recommendation? Are we complying with the recommendation, or are we complying with paragraph 8.27? And is that what covenanted? How does it sit from a legal point of view?
Thank you for that. So yeah, we did discuss it, and I think that you rate, it's a word that is perhaps not the best word to describe what we're asking. So I shall invite our legal officer to clarify.
I think the word covenant just comes from a legal agreement, because the legal agreement is no more than a contract. So what will happen is that the developer owner will give a covenant that they will comply with the terms of the heritage management plan, and because those covenants run with the land, then it will bind the people who buy the houses that are built on the land. So it is technically correct.
Thank you, because I'll give you another example of the advice we've been given before. there are certain pieces of land, the example I'm taking is my local medical practice. The land it sits on is Hampshire County Council land, but it's covenanted to be used for health purposes. That can easily be removed by Hampshire County Council at the stroke of a pen. In this case, does the same thing apply? Because there is what my confusion. The word covenant is in that it could be removed at the stroke of a pen, notwithstanding a legal agreement.
That's a different sort of covenant that you're talking about. Lots of land will have covenants on, often covenants that you can't use it as something as a matter of it being on the land registry title. But the covenant that we're talking about here is a contractual covenant in a 106 agreement, and they certainly can't be removed by the stroke of the pen. There is a procedure, either by agreement of the local authority or after 5 years, there is an application procedure to remove them.
Councillor Jones.
Really, on the same point, I'm not absolutely clear even then. If there is an omission by a conveyance by a solicitor, can this be lost by a failure of that?
It's got nothing to do with a conveyance. It is a 106 agreement that we require a landowner to enter into before they get planning permission. So the landowner will give covenants to the local planning authority that they will do a particular thing, and those covenants run with the land so it binds future purchasers, and that's the way that we overcome the planning harm caused that you identified following the last meeting.
Any further questions? I'm tempted to ask one myself actually on that, and that is, if should a future occasion present itself where the Section 106 condition was going to be lifted, would it have to come back before this committee?
There are some, well, under the scheme of delegation, that you can vary a legal agreement, and there are delegations to do it, so long as the effect is the same. So an example of that would be affordable housing, for instance, if there wasn't going to be on-site provision, but there was still going to be a different way of providing the equivalent, maybe a financial payment, then officers would have the power to do that. But if it's a significant variation, then it needs to come to the planning committee. So if you're giving something up, as you are later on the agenda, it comes to the planning committee, and officers wouldn't exercise the delegation they held if they thought there was any way that it should be considered by committee, because they don't have to exercise their delegated power, they have the choice.
Okay, thank you for that. Does that set your minds at rest on this? I'm seeing some gentle nods. Okay, so if there are no further questions, I shall throw this item out for debate. Who would like to speak first? Do we have anyone wishing to speak? Do we have a mover or seconder? Councillor Hussey moving. Okay, anyone want to second? Councillor Durant seconding. So we'll go to vote. Those in favour, please show. I think that's nearly everyone. Those against, please show. 1. Any abstentions? Okay, can we have the decision, please?
The application is approved, subject to completion of the legal agreement.
Excellent, thank you very much for that. So we shall now move on to the second planning item in front of us, the old house at home in Station Road, Overton. And Jess, if you could introduce that, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the second item before you this evening is the old house at home, Station Road, Overton. The proposal is for the erection of one 4-bedroom dwelling, utilising the existing vehicular access, associated parking, landscaping and pedestrian accesses, and the creation of a replacement beer garden to the rear of the public house. Now, if I take members' attention to the update paper, the only update was that there's agreement to the pre-commencement conditions proposed. There's no overall change to the recommendation, so the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out within the agenda. Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Jeremy Heppel down to speak in support. Good evening. If you'd like to approach the benches on the right, just in front of you there, set up Yeah. So welcome to Development Control, and once you're seated, if you press the right hand button, that'll activate the mic, and when you're ready, you'll have 4 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. I represent the applicant. The application site lies within the settlement policy boundary of Overton, and therefore the principle of development is acceptable. A previous application for 2 dwellings on the site was previously unsuccessful, and it went to appeal. The appeal inspector at the time did helpfully confirm that the redevelopment of this part of the pub's beer garden is acceptable in principle, because an appropriate replacement beer garden can be provided within the site, and that remains the case with this new application. The inspector also confirmed that there were no townscape or heritage issues associated with developing the site for housing. Therefore, as per the previous inspector's decision, there are only 2 remaining issues to be addressed: providing a suitable garden for the new dwelling and protecting the outlook of residents opposite. We did circulate a briefing note to members, which I hope was helpful in addressing these 2 points. In relation to garden space, the previous scheme was criticised for proposing split-level gardens which were overshadowed by trees. The revised scheme places the garden area to the side of the house where it is not overshadowed by trees and where the levels are gentler. The proposed garden is more than twice the council's minimum garden size, and as such represents a generous amenity space. Therefore, the proposed garden area overcomes the inspector's concerns in that it provides a large, high-quality amenity space for future residents. Second, the outlook of residents opposite. The inspector's concern was that the outlook of those residents would be unduly impacted by the previously proposed pair of houses, but the inspector did not consider that the existing houses would be overshadowed, or indeed that their privacy would be reduced. His concern was simply that the change in outlook from the pair of houses was too great for the existing residents to put up with. This has been addressed in the new scheme by reducing it to 1 dwelling instead of 2, and setting the dwelling further back from the road, which will give residents living opposite a varied outlook, which will include soft landscaping, the aforementioned garden area, and a single dwelling. This is illustrated by the comparison plan, which you can see on your screen. The red line shows the original scheme with a pair of houses, and you can see the new house is set further back and is only about half as wide as the previous pair of semi-detached houses. I hope that's clear from the image on the screen. Consequently, the change in outlook for residents opposite will be of a relatively minor nature, and they will retain a high-quality outlook in accordance with the previous inspector's stipulations. We believe we've addressed the concerns raised by the previous inspector in full, and therefore I would respectfully ask members to view the scheme favourably and grant consent, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Councillors, do you have any questions for Mr. Heppel? I don't. Councillor Jones? Yeah.
I don't know whether this is the right moment in the meeting to ask it, but the parking area very close to the public house, will there be any restriction on customers of the pub entering that area?
Well, the public house retains the same number of parking spaces as at present, which are around the front of the pub. So the 3 grey spaces you can see at the rear, I think, are the ones you've identified as being for the house. So they would be in a different material, as you can see from the plan, and I think they would be marked as being, private for the use of residents only. So given that pub customers will park along the front, I wouldn't expect any conflict, but hopefully the signage will, make that clear to patrons.
Any further questions? Councillor Freeman?
When we've looked at this previously, the beer garden at the back of the pub has always seemed extremely unsafe to me. There's a rather large drop onto a floor, and I can't see there being any difference. Are you planning to put a fence up to prevent, because people when they're drunk aren't the best coordinated, and one of my main worries last time was the fact that someone was going to pitch over that wall and it would be a very nasty accident.
Yes, so you're right. The garden does step up noticeably from the pub, but we would be putting a fence alongside there so that you can't topple over from the beer garden into the walkway behind the pub. So, you know, as far as we can make it, it will be safe, it will be fully enclosed, there'll be a set of steps, so we believe it will be a safe space.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. And Councillor Karen Watts, we have you down to speak. Welcome to DC. I'm sure you know the score. 4 minutes and questions. When you're ready.
Thank you. The applicant is attempting to address the issue of overdevelopment by changing the application to one-bedroom property to a four-bedroom property. However, this application on this site would significantly change the street scene. The Borough Councillors, the Parish Council and residents of Station Road remain opposed to this development as it will have a detrimental effect on the outlook for the existing residents of Station Road. Excuse me. The old house at home dates from the 1920s, which can be evidenced by the physical characteristics and the cartographic sources. The building is of the English domestic revival style, which makes a positive contribution to the setting of the Overton Conservation Area, the border of which runs a few feet in its frontage. By virtue of its age, architectural form and material usage, as well as a contribution to the significance of the conservation area and wider vicinity, the building is considered a non-designated heritage site. From the cartographic evidence, the triangular land, which is the application site for the dwelling, appears to have always been associated with the public house. The public house, along with the earlier 19th century houses opposite, would have been constructed in association with the coming railway to the village. The pub would have provided refreshments for travellers returning to the Overton by train, walking back to the heart of the village. The application site forms part of the pub garden, which provides an important and contrasting open space along the bottom of Station Road. Compared to the tight urban grain of the 19th century and later dwellings on the western side of the road, it also acts as an introduction to the looser grain as experienced travelling north with the open frontage of Lamb's Close and the 1920s council housing on the eastern side. The pub garden itself may not be seen as critical to the setting and thus significant of the conservation area. However, development would result in the erosion to the open characteristic of the vicinity. As such, the Historic Environment Officer concludes that the proposals would be in conflict with policy EM11. All development must conserve or enhance the quality of the borough's heritage assets in a manner appropriate to their significance. The loss of the existing community facility, pub garden, remains a major factor in the objection. There has been no change to the proposed pub garden in this plan. The community facility will still be lost. In the previous plan, the proposed garden was not considered as acceptable replacement due to the limited size, cramped layout, significant change in levels and restricted space due to the LPG tank screening. The fundamental reasons for it not being acceptable have not changed. The comments from the Historic Environment Office noted, however, the planning history is material consideration, whereby having regard to the dismissed appeal scheme, the inspector stated policy LBE1 of the Overton Neighbourhood Development Plan primarily relates to landscape, built environment and local distinctiveness, although also requiring a village design statement, the Overton Conservation Area appraisal and the cave building for life standards to be taken into account. In respect to this main issue, conflict with this policy has not been demonstrated. I disagree with the inspector's view that the conservation area is not conflicted by this application. The history and context of the pub is critical to the character of the area, and to simply say that one dwelling, or any dwelling for that matter, does not materially affect the pub in its historic setting is palpably wrong. I support our own officer assessment, and more so as a 34-year-long resident and friend of many lifelong residents of the village, I see the importance of this pub in the local setting. I also retain the view that the impact on properties opposite cited by the appeal inspector remains a concern, namely that this development would have a detrimental impact on the existing occupiers' outlook, and that they would lose some direct sunlight into at least one of the habitable rooms. I am deeply disappointed that this application does not respect our village, and I find that it is contrary to planning policy EM11 and EM10 in particular.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions for Councillor Watts? I see no hands raised. Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. Do we have any questions for officers? Councillor Phillimore.
Can I pick up a paragraph in the actual inspector's appeal decision, which is describing other matters, and it says the appeal site is within the zone of influence of several special areas of conservation and special protection areas within the Solent area. However, there is no need for further consideration of implications of the proposal of these protected sites because the scheme is unacceptable for other reasons. The question is, have these special areas been considered within this application?
Yes, so it would be the nutrient neutrality sections on page 115 onwards. So, yeah.
Okay, are you satisfied you should come back? No, I'm satisfied. Okay. Councillor Bound?
Thank you, Chair. Could the officer confirm is the building proposed further back from Station Road? Because in the parish council seem to think it's 600 millimetres towards Station Road. Or I got the wrong.
I can confirm it is further back, and it is in the report how far back. Sorry, para 8.61. So it was previously 9.6 metres. Sorry, 1 second. No, that's not. No, that's just the width of it.
Yeah, so paragraph 8.61, so the distance, the setback was, for the previous scheme was 9.6 metres, and on this one it would be set back 12 metres from the frontage. And I think on that outline there, you can see the dotted, it was much further forward than this current application.
Any more questions for officers? Councillor Jones?
Have Hampshire Highways made any comment on the build-out that's opposite this entrance? It strikes me that that indicates that there's a problem with this road. It does have the station and the surgery and the fire station, I think, all in this section of road, and they appear to have required some traffic calming there. Is that really a wise place for a new entrance, and have Hampshire Highways commented?
They did comment in that they had no objection to it. Yeah, it is an existing access at the moment. Sorry? It is an existing access at the moment as well. Yeah. So in the photo where the camper van is parked, that's the existing access, and that's where the parking will be on the plans.
Yeah. Yes, my reason with opposite the camper van is that build out, which indicates that there must have been some road safety concern in the past.
Yeah, there are traffic calming measures opposite, but they, yeah, it's in the report. There is no objection.
Yeah, and just also bringing back to the appeal decision, which is a material consideration. There were no concerns for the scheme for 2 dwellings from a highway point of view. So obviously this is one less as well. We have no objection as noted in the report.
And point of clarification, my understanding is that the traffic calm was put in when the mill was in operation, and now the mill is not in operation. Traffic calming is not needed, but that should not be germane to this application. If the statutory consultees, i.e. the Highway Authority, don't object to it, we can't really differ with them and expect a possible appeal to uphold our view on things. Any further questions? Okay. Shall we move to debate then? Does anyone want to start things off? Councillor Phillimore?
Chair, for me, it's what's different between obviously the previous application and this application, and it's I can't agree with the applicant's view of outlook, because wherever you live opposite that dwelling, the outlook is going to be compromised, and the inspector was very, very clear on that. The development would conflict with policy EM10 of the local plan, which requires development to respect the amenities of neighbouring properties and to provide high quality of amenity for occupants of developments having regard to issues such as outlook. And he was very clear on that. And to that effect, I'd like to move refusal.
Okay, we'll have moved for refusal. Do we have anyone wishing to second that? Councillor Durran? Does anyone want to speak on this item, or shall we move to vote? Okay, we'll move to... Need your reasons for refusal. I think I had contrary to EM10. Yeah. Yeah. We might need you to be a bit more specific than that.
Policy EM10 covers a range of a whole range of development management issues. So it would be helpful if members could be a bit more. I think we need to identify the harm. I mean, clearly there was. You will need to kind of specify what the actual harm is that makes the scheme unacceptable.
The harm is that the residents live opposite the site are damaged by the outlook of which used to be some green space.
I think you're I mean obviously the issue before, and I think you raised earlier, was the loss of outlook. But I would, obviously the scheme is different from that previous one. It's one dwelling less, so you need to be really clear that yes, whilst the outlook will change, is that so sufficiently harmful as to warrant refusal of the scheme as a whole on that reason.
Did you wish to come back at this point, Councillor Phillimore? Okay, so I think there was some... Councillor Hussey, you've had your hand up.
With your indulgence, Chair, something I'd just like to be confirmed, or that in the appeal decision, the inspector accepted that the land was suitable for a residential development. Thank you.
Okay, what I think we'll do at this stage, councillors, is we'll move to vote. We have a reason for refusal running contrary to policy EM10, the harm to the outlook from the properties. So on that basis, I think we'll move to vote. Those in favour of the proposal, so, do we have a seconder first? Do we?
You did.
Yeah, we did, yeah. Councillor Durran. Okay, good. So we have a proposal and a seconder. Those in favour of refusal, please show. Is that 6? Okay, those against, please show. 1, 2. And any abstentions? 1, 2. Okay. So I think that's a decision. If we could have that recorded, please.
Thank you, Chair. To confirm, the application is refused for the reasons set out by the committee, so in terms of outlook and being contrary to policy EM10. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you for that. Now moving on to planning item number 3, land northeast Lovedays Farm House, Pound Green, Borkhurst, and if we could have the officer introduction, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is at land northeast of Lovedays Farm, Pound Green. This proposal, or this application, seeks planning permission for the erection of a 5-bed detached dwelling and a garage, alongside a change use of the land to residential garden. In terms of updates, additional tree information was submitted to us today, however, the details of which was not considered sufficient to overcome reason for refusal number 5 relating to trees. This scheme is being recommended for refusal as per the reasons set out in the officer's report.
Thank you very much. We have no parish representatives, but we do have lined up to speak in objection Miss Rosamond Magnuson. Do we have her present? Okay. If we don't have any we've not had any notification. Okay. So in support, we've got Caroline Downey. If you'd like to approach. Welcome to Development Control. When you're seated, right-hand button activates the mic, and when you're ready, you'll have 4 minutes.
Chairman, members, thank you for your time this evening. This application before you is for a single infill dwelling on paddock land. The main reasons for refusal are landscape harm and the fact that officers do not consider it to be a sustainable location. These are subjective matters, and we beg to differ. The first reason for refusal alleges non-compliance with housing distribution policies. But how can it not comply when the key policies are out of date, as confirmed by the High Court judgment for Watermill Bridge? Furthermore, the Secretary of State spent most of Sunday highlighting the principal changes to be announced to the new NPPF tomorrow morning. Every council will have to propose a significant increase in housing numbers, with a 5, not 4-year requirement. This borough faces a net increase of 37% over and above today's housing target. The new NPPF will also place a greater emphasis on small sites, which can be built out more quickly. The written ministerial statement, which, as you're all aware, was published in July, is a material consideration that the council must give appropriate weight in the overall planning balance. The Prime Minister and other ministers have reaffirmed the changes, and the thrust of the new guidelines and the forward trajectory is clear. Citing a refusal on the grounds of sustainable transport, whilst on the move towards a low-carbon future with electric cars and bikes, is, in our opinion, fast becoming obsolete, as confirmed by recent appeal decisions. Regarding landscape impact, had you seen the site, you would have seen how enclosed it is, how there is no impact on trees that can't be conditioned, that it is surrounded by other houses, one of which was granted permission a couple of years ago, and the site is less than 200 yards from the Jordan Dragon pub and a farm shop and cafe slightly further down the lane. Importantly, the report does not quantify the level of alleged harm to the landscape at all. Whilst we acknowledge there will be a change to the landscape, it would be limited and localised. Your officers suggest that there is surface water flooding and there is a need for a sequential test, but the Environment Agency confirms the site is in flood zone 1 with low risk of flooding. That said, the proposed pond and other sustainable water features will help mitigate any additional surface water, and such measures can be conditioned, notwithstanding the requirement that for a sequential test will be removed from the NPPF tomorrow morning. The report references selective appeal decisions that support the officer's position, with no reference to other appeals that are take a contrary view. In any case, the 2 appeal decisions referenced to paragraph 8.8 of the report were issued before the High Court ruling
at Watermill Bridge that confirmed that both SS1 and SS6 are out of date. So we think those decisions and others should be given little or no weight. The High Court judgment must be respected. Therefore, in our opinion, the presumption of favour of development should prevail and this application should be approved. The written ministerial statement in July is mentioned in passing in the report.
1 minute left.
Yet it fails to mention the proposed changes to the 4 or 5 year supply or the mandatory increase in housing requirements. This is the main thrust of the ministerial statement, reaffirmed by the PM and other ministers, yet is given no weight in the officer's report. There is no common ground between the two parties as to the current housing land supply figure. The applicant and many other agents believe the supply is 3.6 years, the council 4.1 years. Regardless of either view, your officers will confirm that as of tomorrow, the council will be unable to demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing. We respectfully ask that you support this application. The reasons for approval are the site is not isolated, the dwellings will be set amongst built form, it will deliver significant biodiversity net gain, contribute to the local economy, comply with climate change initiatives, and make a contribution to the local and national housing requirements. Therefore, we respectfully ask that the application should be approved on the basis that SS1 and SS6 are out of date. Thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for your contribution. Councillors, do you have any questions for Ms Downey? Do I see any hands? Okay, thank you very much. Questions for officers? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. We've just heard from the applicant's agent, I presume, about what might be tomorrow, what might be in a statement. I believe we address applications in the status of our policies today and the status of the local plan today. Yes, we probably are aware of what might be coming down the pipe, but can you confirm that that is not relevant in our deliberations this evening?
Yes, you're correct. Obviously, we're making decisions tonight, and therefore they must be based on what is the current planning policy. You're quite right in all that you've just said there.
Okay, Councillor Phillimore.
Yeah, I just got one, which is the landscape consultee has got verbal objection. Is that normal to have a verbal objection rather than something in writing?
So as officers, it's our job to obviously make decisions on the application. Yes, we do have consultees, and it is perfectly reasonable for us to have verbal conversations with those officers to get their views. But ultimately, the decision rests with us as officers and our recommendation. So that's how this one's been put forward, following a discussion and also my own assessment as an officer on landscape.
I just think that for the benefit of DC, we might want to see that.
The case officer's report sets out the landscape harm, which is a clarification of those discussions and puts forward the arguments of where the harm rests. On page 153, that's the discussion. So that report clarifies the position held by the local authority.
Any more questions, councillors? Okay, I'll throw it open to debate. Anyone wish to start things off? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. But based on the confirmation that I just got from officers, and looking at this particular application, notwithstanding some of the other members of this committee might want to speak, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, duly noted. Councillors, do you wish to speak? Do we have a seconder? We need a seconder. Councillor Durrant. Okay, we shall now move to vote. Those in favour, please show. Okay, those against? Any abstentions? One. Okay, I think that's a fairly clear-cut decision. If we could have that read out, please.
Thank you, Chair. The application is refused as per the reasons set out in the committee report.
Thank you very much. Which brings us on to planning item number 4, Maynards Wood in Chinham. So I think we need to have a couple of people moving and in and out. That's it. Okay. Right. Okay. Maynards Wood, Chinham. Nicola, if you could introduce the item, please.
This is an application for a two-storey front extension, conversion of an existing roof space over a garage, and that would involve raising the roof of that garage space, construction of a dormer and alterations, and following the demolition of an existing bay window. Members obviously visited the property on the viewing last Friday. The recommendation is for approval subject to conditions that are outlined from page 184 of the agenda.
Thank you very much. We have no one here for the parish on the list. No one objecting. Marie Wigmore, I understand, can't make it tonight. And we have Councillor Vaux. So, Councillor Vaux, if you'd like to approach, welcome to DC. I'm sure you know the drill by now. When you're ready, you've got 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this evening and to the committee members who visited the site last week. I have read the officers' report with interest. I appreciate the time and effort officers have put into this challenging application. While I respect the officer's recommendation on this application, I would like to offer an alternative perspective where the decision shifts to refusal. I would like to draw the committee's attention in particular to policies EM1, EM10 and the parking supplementary planning document. Policies EM1 and EM10 are open to a different interpretation. My reasoning for this is as follows. EM1 says that proposals should be sympathetic to the visual quality of the area concerned and that they should enhance and not be detrimental to the character of the visual amenity. EM10-2A says the development should positively contribute to the sense of place and the existing street scene. 2C says it should have due regard to the density, scale, layout and appearance in relationship to neighbouring buildings, and 2E that there is appropriate parking provision. And I'll return to the parking in a minute. On the other aspects, my view is that the application does not comply with these statements. The planning report, para 8.9, states that the raised roof of the garage is below that of the main roof and is therefore subservient. This is correct, but I feel not as important as the impact on the existing street scene. This is building 1.5-storey living accommodation in front of the main house, extending the house the equivalent of a double garage towards the road, in front of the building line for the rest of the Reading Road. Not only is this not compliant with our planning policies, it would create a precedent for other applications to build in front of this building line. I also believe that the closeness of the property to its neighbours and the additional bulk to the building, especially considering the size of previous extensions already added to the property, means that the scale and density is too great for this particular plot. The whole house is simply too big. Finally, regarding the issue of parking, I was not aware until I read the officer's report, para 8.24, that the dimensions of the single garage are not compliant. Our parking supplementary planning document says that 4-bedroom houses in urban areas, and it specifically includes Chinham, should have 3 spaces. The notes to Table 1, page 14 of that document state that in Note 8, that only garages that comply with the minimum internal areas will count as a parking space, and Note 11 that shared driveways must make provision for access and loading for delivery vehicles. I do not agree with the officer's view that the closeness to local amenities and buses makes the lack of 3 parking spaces acceptable. The reality is that a 4-bedroom property in Chinham is very likely to have 4, if not 5 cars. Parking in Maynards Wood is a particular problem raised by other residents living there, with navigation of the road into the close very difficult, and residents having to park their cars on the grass verges along the Reading Road. As committee members who attended the site visit discovered, the shared driveway is particularly awkward to navigate and very tight on space. I do not believe that the shared driveway as it stands is acceptable for additional cars associated with the proposed extension, and that 3 parking spaces should be considered as a requirement, not an option. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions? Nope. No, you got away with it. Right, I guess we'll move on to debate then. Does anyone wish to... Oh, questions for officers. I'm getting ahead of myself now. Questions for officers. Yeah, Councillor Gaskell.
Can I just confirm what you see as a parking space? Because I can see 2 parking spaces in a garage. Does that make 3 or 2?
If you did you go out on site? Just to clarify, the blue car at the front of the picture is number 2. So that's the neighbour's parking area, and then then the 2 cars you can see there are belonging to the application site, where you can see the existing garage, single garage, and the 2 spaces in front.
So do you consider that 3 parking spaces or 2 outside?
That would be 3, but just to clarify, currently the property is a 4-bed unit and it would be going to a 5, so there'd be no requirement for any extra parking space to be provided, so it would comply with our parking standards and parking supplemental planning document.
Okay, thanks. That's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah. Councillor Hussey.
I'd just like to carry on with that line of reasoning. I can't relate that, so please help me. Page 182, paragraph 8.25, whilst there would be a shortfall of 1 space to comply with parking standards. How does that relate to your...
I think it was in reference to the fact that the existing garage that you see, which obviously was built at a time when parking standards were different. So in terms of our current parking dimensions internally, it would be substandard. So I think that's what that's referring to. Yeah, I understand it. Yeah, it might be a bit confusing, but obviously it's an existing situation. It's currently substandard, so it'll still be substandard, but it was still counted as a space back in the day when it was approved as such, and obviously it will be remaining as a parking space in addition to the 2 outside, so it currently has 3.
Okay, did you have a supplemental?
When you say what was approved, are you referring to the 2015 scheme?
No, when the house was built originally. So obviously there was different standards applicable at the time of determination. And when the house next door was built, I think it was built as part of a wider redevelopment.
I think, just if I could help here, I think the point here, I think, is what we're saying. It's going from a 4 to 5 bed. The parking standards
it's not changed.
does not require any additional parking over and above, you know, moving from a 4 to a 5 bed. So they don't have to provide any more as part of this scheme. So, in effect, what we're talking about in terms of parking provision is slightly, not irrelevant, but there is no additional requirement as a result of this proposal than what is already there. And as Nicola has said, it's an existing situation. Yes, the garage is below the standard dimensions we now expect, but at the time, it nevertheless exists, and there is an opportunity to park a small car if one had one in there.
Councillor Jones, did I see your hand up there?
Really on the same point, we're saying this roof will be raised by 900 mil, isn't it? Is there nothing involved in that would change the structure of the garage, and how much change would there have to be in the structure of the garage for it to come under current guidelines?
In terms of how it's built and the structure would be covered by building control, not a planning issue, if that's what you're referring to?
Well, seeing the plan that's there, it looks as though the brickwork above the garage entrance is being raised by a significant amount. And I'm asking how much change there would have to be before it would have to come under current guidance.
Sorry, do you mean in terms of, when you say current guidance, do you mean, are you staying with the parking issue?
Yeah, I mean the current parking.
As I said, there's no requirement to provide any additional parking as a result of this proposal. Moving from a 4 to 5 bed, the standard does not require any more parking.
So the garage is not sufficiently different from the way it's always been, is what you're saying?
Yeah. There's no increase in footprint, is there, of the garage?
No. Can I just clarify? So there's no increase in footprint on that part of the dwelling, so the projection forward of the units remains the same. The eaves, if you can go to the elevations, so the eaves, so that bottom left picture, you can see, where is it? Yeah. The top left, sorry, yeah. So it's going from, I've got it down as 2.5 metres to 3.5 metres. So the eaves is increasing by a metre, and then the ridge will go from 4.8 to 6 metres. So it's an increase in ridge height of 1.2 metres. With the dormer window that you can see there in that elevation. Oh. Yeah, that top left.
It was just to confirm that in doing that, in raising the roof and that space, that there would be no additional buttressing that would compromise the existing footprint.
Going up.
Councillor Phillimore.
Yes, sorry, Chair, just for clarification. Does a garage count as a parking space then?
Yes, it does, as explained previously.
Anyone else who's not asked a question already? Councillor Gaskell.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, Councillor Vaux mentioned the building line in relation to the Reading Road. Is that something that you've considered as part of your refusal for this application? And does it have relevance? Sorry, approval.
Well, it's an existing situation in terms of it projecting forward of the building line. So, yes, that has to be obviously considered in terms of the additional bulk that's added visually upright within the street scene. And as you can see from that picture there, you've got the current hedge and the roof, the hipped roof of the existing garage. So obviously that will be higher above the fence. So in where it's being proposed, being already forward of the dwelling, that is still being taken into account and given. Yeah, I think we've, in reference, if you refer to paragraph 8.9 of the report, which is page 180 of the officer's report, it's saying that given, so there's obviously the setback of the garage from the adjoining highway as well, and that even though it will be visible above the hedge, given so the nature of the increase of the proposals, there wouldn't be any significant harmful effects to warrant refusal of the application.
Okay, there being no further questions, I shall throw this one out for debate. Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I went on the visit on Friday, and we had a really good look round. I agree that the parking situation is not ideal. It was tight getting our bus in there, but it was a bus. It wasn't a car, so a car could have got in there a lot more easily. And it would seem that the parking might obstruct the build on the right-hand side as we went up the drive. If they weren't, if the neighbours didn't get on with each other, it could cause a problem. But I suppose that's not within our thoughts. My opinion is that the extra build on top of what is there already would not vastly affect the view from the street. I went out there with a number of councillors and we looked sort of over the hedge, and it wouldn't be that much more prominent. And it seemed, looking down Reading Road, there wasn't really a consistent street scene either. So it's not as if it's got to stand out as being anything particularly different. And lots of buildings down the road had huge hedges in front of them, so you couldn't really see what was behind them anyhow. So I don't like the parking, but I have no difficulty with the actual proposal, and I would move approval.
Thank you. So we have recommendation moved. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Phillimore. Anyone else wish to speak before we move to vote? Okay, let's move to vote. Those in favour of the application, please show. Okay, those against? 2. Any abstentions? 1. Okay, if we could have the decision recorded, please.
The application is approved, subject to the conditions on the officer's report.
Great, thank you very much. We'll get Councillor Miller back in then. Welcome back. Which brings us on to application number 5, the Topiary Lich Pit. And if we could have Luke introduce that one, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is at 7 the Topiary Lynch Pit. The scheme seeks planning permission to replace the thatched roof with clay tiles to match those of the neighbouring properties. In terms of updates, this site was visited by the viewing panel. We've had clarification on the pre-commencement condition, which has been agreed. It was also that there were circulars presented to councillors, I believe, to do with the original staked brochure, and there was just a small clarification to do with the roof heights, i.e. the roof height would only change by 0.1 metres. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've got quite a few parties down to speak on this tonight. First up will be the Parish Council, Councillor Roger Doust. Welcome to Development Control. And when you're seated and ready, right hand button for the mic. When you're ready, you've got 4 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank the councillors that took time to view this property a few days ago. I represent the views of Old Basing and Lichpit Parish Council, who oppose this application. The Old Basing and Lichpit Parish Council Planning and Development Committee discussed this application at their meeting held on Tuesday the 24th of September of this year and wished to object to the proposal for the following reasons. Old Basing and Lichpit's village design statement requires that any new development or extension to an existing property, residential or commercial, should blend in with the immediate surroundings in that particular part of the settlement. This should be in terms of design and form, scale and materials, and should harmonise with the original features and the details of existing properties and adjacent buildings. The proposed alterations will severely negatively impact the carefully designed local character and rhythm of the award-winning Topiary development's street scene, particularly the loss of a thatched roof, which was referred to in the original design documentation, which states the entrance site, the approach, is a significant section as it forms the crucial architectural bridge between the Topiary and the existing village of Old Basing. Visible from the main road, the houses are set aside on the development entrance road and feature hedgerows with hawthorn and appropriate plants, giving an imposing gateway to the other homes beyond. Some of the largest houses are located here, and with some distinguished by unusual yet distinctive features of a thatched roof. This property is one of only 2 houses out of 85 which was designed with this sympathetic and important feature, which must be retained. We would like to echo the statement of the conservation area, who states that the proposed removal of the thatched roof would conflict with policy EM10 of the local plan, in that it would positively contribute to local distinctiveness, sense of place, and the existing street scene. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions for Councillor Delst? Don't see any hands raised. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
And I have down speaking in objection, Mrs. Emma Ponting. If you'd like to come forward. Welcome to Development Control. When you're seated, the mic's already on. When you're ready, you've got 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. I am a resident within the Topiary Estate, and I'm one of the directors of the Topiary Management Committee. I am here tonight representing this Management Committee and the 23 others who felt strongly enough to register formal objections to this proposal and to explain our position regarding the plan to replace the thatched roof at number 7 with a fully tiled roof. The Topiary Estate was planned and built in the late 1980s, and one of its design aesthetics was to create a development which felt like a small village, reflecting and being sympathetic to the neighbouring village of Old Basing. It did this by incorporating a wide variety of house styles, using an extensive range of building materials, and by having thoughtfully designed landscaped areas, including a village green and a pond. This design aesthetic is reflected in the original Balfour Beatty promotional documents, which I circulated via email yesterday. The Topiary Estate has won awards for its concept and design and has matured nicely into a quiet, friendly, attractive community. According to local estate agents, it is a very sought-after area for prospective house buyers, and it is attractive to house buyers and us existing residents alike precisely because the sense of individuality across the estate. There are a wide variety of house styles, some built with different colours and designs of brick, some with flint facings. And in addition, there are 2 thatched properties sited in commanding and prominent positions. Along with the attractive landscaping, these factors all contribute to the charm and character and the village aesthetic, which makes it a pretty and unique place to live, considering it is a relatively modern development. We note that the Parish Council objected to this application, as just described, and we also note that the Basingstoke and Dean Conservation Officer raised a conflict with policy EM10 of the local plan, in that any development should respect the local environment and contribute to the existing street scene. The Management Committee believes that replacing the thatch with a tiled roof would be a significant departure from the original intended design ethos and the existing street scene. We accept that, should this plan be approved, any roof tiles would be sympathetic to the existing and neighbouring tiled roofed properties. However, we would like to focus your attention on the fact that number 7, the Topiary, was specifically designed with a thatched roof in order to stand out as one of the most significant and impressive dwellings on our flagship estate. And the property, with its thatch, played a huge role in contributing to the fact that the Topiary estate is not just another modern housing development. Notwithstanding the planning rules and regulations, the Topiary Management Committee would welcome your support to preserve the charm
1 minute
and unique...
left. Oh, you got 1 minute left.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I thought that was it. To preserve the charm and unique characteristic of our award-winning model village, which stands head and shoulders above many other local developments, and of which Basingstoke and Dean should be, quite rightly, extremely proud. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions, councillors? Okay, thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
And Councillor Kate Tuck. Mr Cooper, sorry, yes, I'm ahead of myself, sorry. Mr Speaking in support we'll have first, yeah, and then we'll have Councillor Tuck. Welcome to Development Control. The mic is on, and when you're ready, you'll have 4 minutes. Thank you very much.
Right one, do you say?
Yeah, the mic's on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's off now.
It was on.
It's on, that's
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Daniel Cooper, and I'm the owner of 7 The Topiary. Myself and my family wish to change our current thatch roof to a tiled. Our building is not listed, nor it is not in any conservation areas, which have been confirmed by the council. When I bought number 7, there wasn't any restrictions on the deeds stating we couldn't change my roof from thatch to tiled. The house is located in a cul-de-sac, therefore there is no passing traffic apart from neighbours, all of which do not oppose to the change to a tiled roof. In fact, many have said it would blend in better. No character would be changed, as the topiary is made up of all tiled roofs except from only one other. Upon changing the roof, I would ensure that it all blends in and it keeps in line with the neighbouring properties. I strongly feel it should be down to the owner to make the decisions about their own home. We have found it extremely difficult to get home insurance due to the thatched and the high risk of fire associated with it. A quick look online can show the statistics. As I am sure you can appreciate, the country is facing a cost of living crisis and the premiums I have been offered are astronomical and something that we'll struggle to budget for. This flags major concern to me as I have 3 young children living at home, and any damages or fire due to the lack of insurance coverage would potentially leave us without a home. I would like to ask those opposing consider the devastating effect this could have on our family, in particular our children. Although the initial cost of a tiled roof insurance, premiums and maintenance that will be required going forward. For those who aren't aware, thatched is incredibly hard to source and finding a master thatcher is even harder. I again would like to address those opposing. It seems incredibly unfair that we should have to pay out for other people's viewing pleasure. We have had great feedback from not only the Basingstoke and Dean Council, but from other direct neighbours who surround 7 The Topiary. I would also like to point out the pest situation. The thatched has the potential to encourage. It can attract the likes of wasp nests and rodents, something that potentially could impact not only on our own property, but surrounding properties. Most importantly, I take most pride in my property and I strongly feel I'm doing nothing wrong and I am within my rights by changing my roof to tiles.
Great, thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions for Mr Cooper? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. How long have you lived in number 7?
7 years.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much, Mr Cooper.
Thank you.
And now, Councillor Kate Tuck. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, you know the score. When you're ready, you've got 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I object to this application and the assessment of the planning balance for the key issues 2, 3 and 5, page 199 of the papers, require revision. Issue 3, heritage. I support the heritage team assessment stated in paragraph 8.19, whereby the thatch roof was to be a focal point and a profoundly significant impact on the unique village character of the topiary. The officer assessment talks about the heritage aspect, but fails to understand that the Balfour Beatty development in the 1980s created an exciting concept which departs radically from the standardised form of layout and home types and strives to emulate a village conservation area. That's from their booklet. It also contravenes BDBC policy EM1 landscape and EM10 delivering high quality development. Issue 2, impact on the character of an area stroke design. The conclusion in para 8.8 that there are tiled roofs nearby, therefore there would be no impact in removing the thatch, is again to completely miss the point. The original design brief has not been properly summarised or explained in this report. From the Balfour Beatty design concept, the development brief we have set ourselves was to create a village scene in a modern environment. As no traditional village exists on the basis of uniformity, the result is a series of varying yet appealing home styles and elevations, with considered changes in scale and height of buildings featuring several focal points. The ancient art of thatching is specially mentioned as a key element in this higgledy-piggledy village scene, as is the approach, with the largest houses distinguished by the unusual yet distinctive feature of a traditional thatched roof. This must be considered with NPPF section 12 para 131, which states, the creation of high-quality, beautiful and sustainable buildings and places is fundamental to what the planning and development process should achieve. And para 132, that says plans should set out a clear design vision, which I think we've got here, and identify the special qualities of each area, and explaining how this should be reflected in development. The Litch Pit 1980s development is a remarkable achievement in that it provides an extremely well thought out layout and design execution. Balfour Beatty and the then head of planning worked extremely closely to produce a well thought out and considered development which has stood the test of time. Balfour Beatty described it as a stunning example of environmental design at its best. Therefore, to remove the focal points of the thatched roof is to significantly and harmfully erode the very special character. I refer you to NPPF paras 135A, B, C and D, which talk about this for the lifetime of the development. NPPF para 139, which says significant weight should be given to B, outstanding or innovative designs which promote high levels of sustainability or help raise the standard of design more generally in an area. Issue 5, impact on residential amenity. There will be a loss of outlet.
1 minute left.
Not just for the neighbouring properties, but for the village scene as approached from Great Binfields Road. To say the loss of a key design feature will not have an adverse impact is self-evidently untrue. You are determining whether we in BDBC value well-designed, good quality development when we so rarely have it, or whether we choose to erode and destroy it. I believe it is worth protecting and hope you will re-weigh the planning balance tonight and reject this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions for Councillor Tuck? Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. Questions for officers? Councillor Howell-Sorrell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm rather convinced by the argument that the original intention of the developer and the planning department at the time was for this development, as we just heard, stand the test of time. But I'm not entirely sure that's a particularly strong reason to refuse this application. So I'm hoping you can give me a little bit of clarity as to whether that holds any weight.
I would agree. I think that what we've got to consider in front of us is whether the proposal in front of us complies with policy. So that is the fundamental question at play, as you set out. I think there is a change, obviously, from thatch to tile. We have to look at whether that would integrate with the surrounding area. So I think that's the main consideration here. Whilst the design intention originally set out, obviously, was it to have a thatch. Villages come and go, characters change. A change doesn't render it to be harmful.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. I
think I asked the question on the viewing panel. Was it necessary to put in a planning application to change the materials on your roof? If I wanted to change the materials on my roof, would I have to do it?
I think if it's like for like replacement, then you would be able to not have to apply. I think it's changing the ridge height. I think the change here is also there's a slight increase of the ridge height, and also, does it go down? Goes down. It goes down. And also, clearly there's quite a difference in the external appearance between thatch and tile. Nevertheless, the application has been made and that's before us. So,
Councillor Hussey? Any further questions? Okay, debate. Councillor Hussey?
Thank you, Chair. I understand the original sort of concept for the residential area called the topiary, trying to link it and show some sympathy to the conservation area. But when I look at number 7, it's a heritage style building, but it's quite obviously quite a modern building, built in the 80s. The thing to me which is out of place with the appearance of that house is the thatch roof. I think in the original concept of this estate, that was a mistake. I think the loss of it would have no impact on the conservation area. It's not part of a street scene facing the conservation area. In fact, it's very similar to many other houses in Old Basing. I personally think it's an improvement, so I would be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Are you happy to move, Councillor Hussey? Okay. Do we have a Councillor Jones?
I think having viewed it the other day, we saw that in addition to the two thatched houses, there's a house with a flint face and the pond well with its humpback bridge. I think there was a major attempt when this development was designed to produce some character in it rather than the anonymous things we have elsewhere in the borough. I think it has to be seen in that context, and also viewing the house from the pond, it did actually have quite a pleasing aspect. I must say the other view that we just saw is not terribly exciting.
Okay, so I'm looking for a seconder for the proposal. Councillor Bound? Yeah.
Yes, I will second it. I mean, I went on the viewing and to me, I'm afraid it's an estate. I don't want to upset people, but to me it is an estate. And by changing one roof to tiles isn't going to make it any different. It's not going to make it any less an estate than it already is.
Okay, thank you. Noted and seconding. A couple of other hands up. Does anyone else want to speak before we move to vote? Okay, we'll move to vote then. Those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Okay, those against, please show. 1, 2, 3. Okay, any abstentions? 1. Okay, if we could have the decision, please.
The application is approved subject to the conditions in the report.
Thank you very much. Which brings us on to our final planning item tonight, which is Fairacre, Whistler's Lane, Silchester. And that's section 52 variation. So Nicola, if you'd like to introduce that one, please.
As outlined by the Chair, and just to clarify the recommendation to members tonight, the application is to approve a deed of discharge in part which relates to plot B, which is the property known as Fairacre. It was part of a site which had 2 dwellings on there, and they both at the time of the 1985 outline planning permission, members of the planning committee at the time sought to secure a legal agreement which is outlined in paragraph 2.1 of the officer's report, and the legal agreement sought to secure that the owner shall not seek to carry out any further development on the site. There was also condition 4 on that planning consent, which also restricted the use, or so not restricted, that the property to the right-hand side there with the blue arrow, that's plot B, which is Fairacre, which is the property in question tonight. So the condition restricts that property to a single-storey bungalow, which is what you see, and it has currently remained and stayed as a single-storey building. So the application for the deed of discharge only relates to this property, doesn't relate to the other property to the west, which is that 2-storey plot A. So before you tonight is the deed of discharge, which only relates to this part of the site and the original consent, and that's subject to the payment of the legal costs that this deed of discharge be approved.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions on the paper? Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Chair. In paragraph 3.1, it states the site lies outside a settlement policy boundary. Is that referring back to the original planning application, or is that extant today?
That's as today as well.
Okay, any further questions? Debate? Councillor Howell-Sorrell.
I don't feel especially strongly about this, and nobody else stuck their hand up really quickly, suggesting nobody else does either. The report's fairly comprehensive, and I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Miller. So move to vote then. All those in favour, please show. So I think that's unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much for that. I think that concludes our business tonight. Sorry, we'll just have the we'll have the decision, then we'll conclude business. Yeah.
So the deed of discharge is approved.
Thank you very much. So that does conclude our business tonight. So thank you very much, everybody, and I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you. Thank you.